Welcome to Proclaiming Justice, a podcast from PJTN that focuses the light of truth on vital issues in today's headlines that impact every American. I'm your host, Laurie Cardoza-Moore, founder and president of Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, and I'm here to educate, motivate, and activate you to action. I want to arm you with the truth and the facts you'll need to fight and preserve our constitutional republic and uphold the Judeo-Christian values our nation was founded upon. Welcome to Proclaiming Justice, a PJTN podcast where we shine the light of biblical truth on vital issues from today's headlines that impact every American, Jew and Christian, people of faith, and people of conscience. I'm your host, Laurie Cardoza-Moore. If you missed the last episode of this podcast, you will find it and our previous podcast lineup on our website at pjtn.org, as well as all the other platforms that you use to access your favorite podcasts. On this week's podcast, I have invited Stephanie Maier to talk about PJTN's upcoming Taking Back America's Children Summit in Franklin, Tennessee on Sunday, January 29th. Stephanie will be heading up the training to assist activists in laying out a strategy to victory in their local school board races. In addition to her books, speeches, and trainings across the country, Stephanie is also the National Vice President of Programs at FreedomWorks, helping pro-freedom conservative grassroots activists create legislative change. I also want to remind you that it's important for you to listen and share this and all of our previous podcasts with your family and friends so that they can become more informed about this and other related issues that can threaten our republic and the state of Israel. So please remember to like and share. Stephanie, welcome to PJTN's Proclaiming Justice podcast.
Hi, Laurie. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's great to talk to you as you're moving about the country. I know that you've been extremely busy and you're getting ready to join us in Franklin on January 29th for our upcoming Taking Back America's Children Summit. And of course, we're delighted to have you. For our audience, those of you who recall, Stephanie was at our event in February of 2022, where we were in Orlando training parents and citizens on engaging not just on the local level with the local government, but school boards specifically. And so the training was incredible. Stephanie was marvelous. Everybody loved her. They walked away with some great ideas and strategies to go back and affect their local community, especially as it pertains to the school board. So Stephanie, thank you again for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you and greeting you in Franklin. But tell our audience a little bit more background about yourself and why this training is so critically important for now.
Sure. Just very briefly on my background, over the last 25 years, I started off in Florida politics and then actually grew that to more experience across the country as a gubernatorial campaign manager and grassroots organizer in elections. And I had an opportunity to work overseas in Cambodia, training women who were running for the parliament there. And that really grew into a long period of my career where I lived in 14 different countries, including Afghanistan, Tajikistan, Cambodia, Haiti, all throughout the Middle East. Really focusing on training everyone from civil society members, meaning voters and citizens, to legislators and journalists on the importance of freedom principles, the importance of engaging in your government. So across the world, that is one thing we share, regardless of the kind of political or economic system you're living under. Everyone really does want to say in who governs them, whether they're allowed to have it or not. It's something that's intrinsic within all of us. And the issue that's really brought me to focusing grassroots trainings, I don't focus solely on this, but I'm really hyper-focused, if you want so, on our public education system is a couple of reasons. Number one, I'm a mom. My children are 14 and 16, and they have gone through the public school system in Florida and now in North Carolina. And I've seen, as have, of course, so many alarmed parents across the country, what our children are being taught. And quite frankly, it's not educating, it's indoctrinating in many of these areas. And it is at the expense as well of our children learning their basic reading and writing and math and things that are supposed to prepare them for critical thinking and success. So, one of the people that I've mentioned this before, I'm sure you've heard me say it, Lori, but the late Reverend Melvin Tinker talked about the fact that we are a cut flower generation. And what he meant by that is that we have, as a generation now, become separated from the roots of our Judeo-Christian founding and the principles that have allowed so many generations before us to be successful. And of course, based on a republic and based on a free market. And really, I know we'll talk more about this as we go, but changing school boards is a really important step towards reconnecting the next generation to the roots of those inalienable rights and really starting to turn the tide as we saw in 2022 across the country. So that's where my passion is, and that's where I think a lot of parents are, and I'm excited to join you on the 29th for that reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you bring up some very important points for our audience. It is up to us, our generation, to stem the tide, to confront this Marxist wicked agenda, to rob our country of our heritage, to rob our children of their future. And if we as, citizens do not stand up, moms and dads, tax-paying citizens, you may have a child or you may not have a child in the public school system, but you pay the taxes. You are invested in the future of our country just because of that. And so that's why it is so important that we engage. Stephanie, I know you were involved in the recent elections, November 8th in 2022, and everybody kept complaining, saying, where's the red wave? Where's the red wave? Well, the red wave was taking place on the local level with the school board races. I mean, states, counties, across the country, in states across the country, we had record number of school boards that were flipped. We had record number of conservatives that were getting elected, but nobody was focused on that. Of course, the media isn't going to draw attention to that. And that's why people like George Soros, over the most recent couple of years, have started investing in the school board races because they know we have figured it out. And if we can capture and take control back of our children and their education and their minds, that they lose, that George Soros and his ilk will not be able to bring this nation down. And so it's so critically important that you come. Many of you already know about our event that's coming up on January 29th in Franklin, Tennessee, the Taking Back America's Children Summit. This is the second one we've hosted. Stephanie is going to be coming in. Stephanie, talk about the training. Talk about why this training that you provide is so critically important and why people have to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of important points as we lead up to the training. One, when you mentioned, some people who are listening maybe don't have children or grandchildren in the public school system anymore. But the reason that it's so important that they're invested, you mentioned tax paying, that's of course a big one, but also the fact that, and I've come across this in different places where I'm doing these trainings, is that some people think they're disconnected because it doesn't impact them. But even if you don't have children in the public school system, and maybe you have children in the private school system, and you think you have a lock on this and it's not a problem, all of us collectively are going to inherit the generations of students who are going through the public school system. Yes. They are going to be people who work in our communities, who are potentially in management and decision-making positions. So this really is a call to arms for everyone because, intellectual arms, I should clarify, but, because it does affect us all. So that's number one. Number two, just speaking briefly to 2022 elections, you're absolutely right. I think everyone had their eyes on the federal ball and they were wanting to wave there. And you're right. George Soros and his ilk have been really quite strategically brilliant in saying, no, we need to focus on local elections. So county commissioners, school boards for sure, even sheriffs, even city councils, all the local has been a strategic plan of theirs, definitely enacted heavily for the last 5 years. The last two cycles, you could even say, since before 2016. So the good news in all of that is, yes, there was a red wave. It just depends on how you define red wave. If it doesn't look like a federal red wave, that's because it was local. You know, there's more than 16,000 school districts in the United States and about 100,000 school board members, somewhere between 85 and 100,000 across the country. And states in 2022, so the majority of those states do not have parental rights legislation in place. But in 2022, because of the work that you're doing, that I'm doing, these trainings, parents out there actually hitting the ground and engaging their school boards, 12 states enacted parental rights legislation. And of those, they introduced it. And of those, 6 enacted the legislation into law. And Kentucky has one, or sorry, Kansas has one legislation pending. Now, the reason that I'm saying this and the point I want to make with that is, you might think, well, 12 states enacted legislation, that's just a drop in the bucket. And it's not. And the reason why is because those 12 states and the trainings that I've done and that you've done collectively, between your trainings and the trainings that I've done, there were, in 2022, 136 school board seats were flipped to a conservative pro-free parent or someone who has a school board district. Now, the reason that's important is these numbers, like 12 states and 136 seats, sounds like nothing. And I want your listeners to really understand those 136 seats over Arizona, Texas, Florida, and Ohio represent over 1 million students. So when you think of it in terms like that, that is a huge impact on the children who are going to come out and be our future leaders and community members.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons, ladies and gentlemen, that we're targeting specifically states like Florida and Texas and eventually, God willing, California, because these 3 states determine what the rest of the country is going to use to educate the children, the curriculum, the textbooks, the instructional materials, now even the library books we're dealing with. And just in Florida, with all the changes that we've been able to make, you know, but by the work that we've done, Stephanie has done, other organizations, Moms for Liberty there, the work that we're doing, Florida now, 1.8 million children are going to be educated with a proper perspective of civics because of Governor DeSantis. And so we're working to help support him by going in, engaging the local community, getting parents and citizens involved to flip their local school districts so that, yes, it creates the force multiplier that we have to have in order to confront the George Soroses and those Marxists who are trying to destroy our country. Because the one thing they don't have, and Stephanie, I'm sure you agree with me on this, the one thing they don't have is the boots on the ground. We have the numbers with us who agree with us, but we've got to engage. We have to mobilize to take action. Stephanie, in our final minutes that we've got, tell our audience about, what they can do, why it's important, again, for them to show up, to attend this training, to get involved on the local level. And how can they learn more about your organization as well and the work you're doing?
Absolutely. So the training in Tennessee on the 29th is really important. One, if we just look at Tennessee alone, we were just talking about numbers, and not to let federal numbers fool you and not to let seemingly small numbers fool you, like 12 states, because of the large numbers of students impacted, right? So in Tennessee alone, they've been sliding in their rank in education, and depending on what source you see, they're ranked 39 now in public school education. They have somewhere around 145 school districts, but Memphis Shelby County School District alone is comprised of over 110,000 students. So there's a massive number from one school district in one state. So we have to get granular in our action, and we have to get intentional. So the training on the 29th really goes into what you need to be to be effective when you're taking your time engaging school boards, whether you're organizing volunteers or you're testifying or you're trying to put pressure on the school board members to change a certain policy that they have. All of these different things, from curriculum to critical race theory and everything in between, you have to know, for example, how to share your story. People don't remember statistics as much as they remember stories. So we're going to talk about how do you share your story in a way that's effective and is not rambling or going off topic. We're going to talk about how to organize. We're going to talk about how to give effective school board testimonies that have impact and aren't just a waste of your time. I know everybody has seen school boards where the members are just sitting there with these glassy-eyed stares while somebody testifies passionately. Well, that might, some of that is because we have to go in with a strategy when we're testifying. Those 3 minutes are critical. So we're going to talk about that. And we're going to utilize the knowledge in the room of all the parents who have been engaging and share knowledge. How often do you get to come together with 100 or 200 other parents who are working in the same space trying to make change? You're going to hear some of the best ideas right there from that group of people. So we're going to make sure that we are knowledge sharing in that room. And I really want to see as many parents as possible coming. And well, actually, I should correct that. It doesn't matter if you're a parent or not. As many people as possible coming to engage in these trainings and go back and take these to your fellow communities and community members to really increase our impact. Because we can do this. We've seen it in 2022. The numbers don't lie. And we are on the radar now. Parents and taxpayers and voters are on the radar of these big groups, and that's a sign that we're being successful. So we need to keep the pressure on, keep the gas engaged, and show up on the 29th.
That's right. Thank you, Stephanie. In fact, you're so right on. In fact, we're so engaged and we're on everybody's radar to the extent that now we are labeled domestic terrorists by our own government. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this program. We will post this podcast on our website and all of our podcast platforms so that you can share with your family and friends. As PJTN Watchmen, we have a biblical mandate to stand against the ungodly rising Marxist threat that is destroying this nation and other Western nations, threatening our Judeo-Christian values and promoting anti-Semitism. We cannot remain silent. God warned the prophet Ezekiel about the responsibility of the watchman. As a watchman, you can sound the alarm and warn others by simply sharing this podcast with your family and friends. Dietrich Bonhoeffer reminded us, silence in the face of evil is itself evil. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. Don't forget to join us for next week's podcast as we continue this conversation about combating the rise of anti-Semitism and taking back local control of our communities and our children's education. I want to also remind you that if you have not signed up to become a PJTN Watchman, you can help support this mission through our award-winning documentaries and Focus on Israel programs, as well as more programs like this one for just $20 a month. So go to our website at PJTN.org to watch our programs and listen to our podcasts. With your generous monthly donation, you can ensure that PJTN remains on the front lines and in the headlines, but we can't do it without your faithful prayers and financial support. I hope that you will prayerfully consider supporting our mission as we educate to activate Jews, Christians, and all people of conscience to stand on the front lines of this all-encompassing war. God bless you, and thank you for all you do on behalf of our Jewish brethren, the State of Israel, and these United States. Thank you again for joining me on this edition of Proclaiming Justice. Please share this podcast with your family and friends. For more information about how you can get involved, please visit our website at pjtn.org. As a PJTN Watchman, you can help us keep up the fight to preserve our freedom for our children and their children for such a time as this.